German Shepherd was being kicked by a crowd. What baby did next left everyone in tears. What you're about to listen will shake you to your core. A moment of pure innocence confronting the darkest cruelty, and the miracle that followed changed everyone forever. If this story doesn't leave you in tears, nothing will. The sun hung lazily in the cloudless sky over the small town of Pine Creek. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market were always Emma's favorite time with her 4-year-old daughter Zoe. The weekly ritual gave them precious moments together, away from Emma's demanding job as a veterinary technician. "Can we get strawberries, Mommy?" Zoe's eyes sparkled with excitement as she skipped alongside her mother, her honey-blonde pigtails bouncing with each step. She wore her favorite blue sundress with tiny daisies embroidered along the hem, the one her father Max had bought her before his latest business trip. "Of course, sweetie, and maybe some of those honey sticks you love so much." Emma smiled down at her daughter, marveling at the unbridled joy radiating from her tiny face. Zoe had always been different from other children, more perceptive, more attuned to the world around her, in ways that sometimes left Emma breathless with wonder. They wandered through the bustling marketplace, baskets filling with fresh produce. When Emma first heard it, a commotion from somewhere behind the row of vendor stalls. Angry voices, laughter that didn't sound kind. Something about it made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "Stay close, Zoe." Emma instinctively pulled her daughter nearer, but in that split second of distraction, Zoe's hand slipped from hers. Before Emma could react, Zoe darted between the stalls toward the source of the noise. "Zoe, come back!" Emma called out, panic rising in her throat as she pushed through the Saturday morning crowd. By the time she broke free of the market stalls, her heart was pounding against her ribs like a caged animal. What she saw next stopped her cold. In a dirty alley behind the market, a semicircle of teenagers had gathered, 6, maybe 7 of them, laughing and jeering. In the center of their cruel circle lay a German Shepherd, its once magnificent coat now matted with dirt and blood. One boy, tall with a black hoodie pulled low over his face, reared back his foot for another vicious kick. And there, stepping directly between the dog and its tormentor, stood tiny Zoe. Emma's scream died in her throat as the world seemed to slow around her. Several adults had gathered at the alley's entrance, their faces masks of concern and hesitation. No one moved, no one except Zoe. "Get lost, kid," sneered the tallest boy, his voice cracking slightly. "This mutt's dangerous. We're doing everyone a favor." But Zoe didn't budge, her small shoulders squared beneath her sundress as she stared up at the boy. Tears streamed down her cherubic face, but there wasn't a hint of fear in her eyes. Only a righteous anger that seemed impossibly old in such a young child. "Stop hurting him!" Zoe's voice rang out clear and strong, echoing against the brick walls of the alley. "He's scared! You're making him hurt!" The teenagers exchanged uncomfortable glances. A girl with purple-streaked hair snickered, but it sounded hollow, uncertain. "Did you not hear me?" The tall boy took a threatening step forward. "Get out of the... I said stop!" Zoe's voice carried a power that froze everyone in place. Even Emma, finally breaking from her shock and rushing toward her daughter, felt it, something almost electric in the air around her little girl. Zoe knelt beside the trembling dog, her tiny hand hovering inches from its matted fur. The German Shepherd, despite its obvious pain and fear, lifted its head slightly. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the inevitable snap of jaws. Instead, the dog's tail thumped weakly against the ground. A pink tongue emerged to gently lick Zoe's outstretched palm. "It's okay," Zoe whispered, her voice now soft as she stroked the dog's head with a gentleness that brought tears to Emma's eyes. "They won't hurt you anymore, I promise." The teenagers shifted uneasily, the power of their cruel pack suddenly dissolved by the pure innocence before them. One by one, they backed away, muttering excuses. The tall boy lingered the longest, something unreadable crossing his face, before he too turned and walked away. Emma finally reached her daughter, her heart still hammering with the fear of what could have happened. "Zoe, you can't just run away like that. That dog could have..." "His name is Atlas," Zoe interrupted, her eyes never leaving the injured animal. "And he wouldn't hurt me, Mommy. He's a good boy. The best boy." Emma knelt beside her daughter, automatically assessing the dog's injuries with her trained eye. The German Shepherd was severely malnourished, ribs visible beneath a coat that should have been glossy and thick. Fresh wounds mingled with older scars across his body. One ear was partially torn, and his right hind leg lay at an unnatural angle. "How do you know his name is Atlas, sweetheart?" Emma asked, already pulling out her phone to call animal control. Zoe looked up, her blue eyes clear and certain. "He told me, Mommy." A chill ran down Emma's spine that had nothing to do with the spring breeze. As Emma called for help, a small crowd gathered at a respectful distance. Zoe never moved from Atlas's side, whispering words too soft for anyone else to hear. The dog's eyes, one amber, one clouded with a previous injury, remained fixed on the little girl as though she were the only thing anchoring him to this world. "Animal control is on their way," Emma told her daughter, hanging up the phone. "And the police. Those boys." "They were scared too," Zoe said simply, surprising Emma once again. Not like Atlas, but in a different way. Empty inside. She continued stroking the dog's head, her small fingers now covered in dirt and blood, yet she didn't seem to notice or care. "How did you know, baby?" Emma asked quietly. "How did you know the dog, Atlas, was in trouble?" Zoe tilted her head, considering the question with a seriousness that sometimes made Emma forget her daughter was only 4. "I heard him crying in here." She tapped her chest right over her heart. "Not with my ears, Mommy. In here." Before Emma could respond, a white van with the Pine Creek Animal Control logo pulled up at the alley entrance. Officer Carlos Jimenez approached cautiously, his experienced eyes taking in the scene. "That's quite a brave little girl you've got there," he said to Emma, crouching down a few feet from Zoe and Atlas. "Hey there, sweetheart. My name's Carlos. I'm here to help your furry friend, okay?" Zoe studied the man's face intently before nodding. "Atlas is really hurt. The bad people used him for fighting and kept him in a cold cage. Then they threw him away when he wouldn't fight anymore." Carlos's eyebrows shot up as he exchanged a glance with Emma, who shook her head slightly. She had no idea how Zoe could know such details. "Well, we're going to take good care of him now," Carlos said gently, though Emma didn't miss the concern in his eyes as he examined the dog more closely. "But I have to be honest. His injuries are very serious, and he might be aggressive due to his past. Standard procedure in these cases." He didn't finish the sentence, but Emma understood. Euthanasia was the likely outcome for a fighting dog with this level of trauma. "No!" Zoe's voice was sharp again, her small hands burying themselves protectively in Atlas's fur. "You can't take him away to die. He's not bad. He just needs someone to love him." "Zoe, honey," Emma began, but something stopped her. The way Atlas leaned weakly into her daughter's touch, the trust evident in his posture despite his obvious pain. "I'll foster him," Emma heard herself say, surprising even herself. "I'm a vet tech at Pine Creek Animal Hospital. I can monitor him, handle his medical needs at home." Carlos hesitated. "That's against protocol for a case like this. We don't know his history, his triggers." Please," Emma insisted, watching as her daughter whispered something in the dog's ear that made his tail thump harder against the ground. "I'll take full responsibility. Dr. Lisa can come check on him, please." Perhaps it was the desperation in her voice, or the extraordinary connection between the little girl and the broken animal before them. But finally, Carlos nodded. "I'll need you to sign some waivers," he warned. "And if there's any aggression at all—" "There won't be," Zoe said with absolute certainty. As Carlos prepared a stretcher and muzzle, Zoe leaned close to Atlas again, her lips near his torn ear. Emma couldn't hear what her daughter whispered, but the effect was immediate. The dog's tense muscles relaxed visibly, allowing Carlos to approach with the muzzle. "I don't think he needs that," Zoe protested. "It's just for transport, sweetheart," Carlos explained kindly. "It's the rules." Zoe looked dissatisfied but nodded. "I already told him it's okay. He understands." True to her word, Atlas remained perfectly still as Carlos slipped the muzzle over his snout, not even flinching when the man checked his injuries more thoroughly. "This is," Carlos muttered, shaking his head. "I've never seen a fighting dog this calm, especially around a child. It's like he understands everything." As they carefully moved Atlas onto the stretcher, Emma noticed a man standing across the street, partially hidden behind a parked truck. Something about his intense focus on the scene made her uneasy. When he raised a phone to take photos, she instinctively moved to block Zoe from view. By the time she looked again, the man was gone. The drive home was silent, with Zoe insisting on riding in the back of Carlos's van to keep Atlas calm. Emma followed in her own car, her mind racing. What had she just committed to? Max would be furious when he returned from his business trip to find a potentially dangerous dog in their home. But the alternative, Zoe's heartbreak if Atlas were euthanized, was unthinkable. Their small two-bedroom house had never felt so inadequate as it did when they carefully carried Atlas inside. Emma had already called Dr. Lisa Anderson, who promised to come by immediately with supplies and medication. "Where should we put him?" Carlos asked, the stretcher held carefully between him and Emma. "My room," Zoe said decisively, leading the way down the narrow hallway to her bedroom with its butterfly wallpaper and stuffed animal collection. "Sweetie, I don't think," Emma began. "He needs to be somewhere that feels safe," Zoe insisted with that same unnerving certainty. "My room is the safest place in the world." They compromised on a thick blanket in the corner of Zoe's room, close enough for her to see him, but not on her bed. As they settled Atlas onto the makeshift bed, Emma noticed her daughter had already arranged her favorite stuffed animals in a protective semicircle around the spot. Dr. Lisa arrived 30 minutes later, her kind face growing serious as she examined Atlas. After a thorough check, she pulled Emma into the kitchen while Carlos distracted Zoe. "This dog has been through hell, Emma," Dr. Lisa said bluntly. "Classic signs of dog fighting, scarring patterns around the face and front legs, old fractures that healed wrong. But there's something else." She hesitated. "What is it?" Emma asked, her stomach tightening. "I found a partial microchip during my scan. It's damaged, but there might be enough to trace where he came from." Dr. Lisa's expression was grim. "I don't want to alarm you, but dogfighting is organized crime, Emma. These animals are valuable to the wrong people. If someone is looking for him—" "He was abandoned," Emma protested. "Those teenagers." "We're probably just opportunistic bullies who found an already injured dog," Dr. Lisa finished. "The actual fighting injuries are older. Someone dumped him, yes, but why here, in a town this small?" Carlos joined them, his face equally serious. "I need to report the partial chip number. If he was stolen from a legitimate owner at some point—" Emma nodded numbly, glancing down the hallway where she could see Zoe sitting beside Atlas, reading aloud from her favorite picture book, as if the dog was hanging on every word. Perhaps most remarkably, he was. His eyes never left her face. After Dr. Lisa had administered pain medication, antibiotics, and left detailed care instructions, Carlos prepared to leave. "I'll be checking in regularly," he warned. "First sign of aggression." "I understand," Emma said, though she was beginning to wonder if such concerns were necessary. Atlas had remained gentle throughout the entire examination, despite what must have been considerable pain. After everyone left, Emma made dinner while keeping an anxious eye on Zoe's room. She'd left the door open to monitor them, but all she could see was her daughter's back as she continued reading story after story to the injured dog. "Dinner time, sweetheart," Emma called eventually. "Atlas needs to rest now." To her surprise, Zoe obeyed immediately, patting the dog's head before joining her mother in the kitchen. "He's very tired," she reported seriously, "but he's feeling safer now." "That's good," Emma said, serving mac and cheese, Zoe's favorite. "How did you know he needed help, Zoe? Really?" Zoe twirled her fork in the cheesy pasta, considering the question. "I told you, Mommy. I heard him in my heart. He was calling for someone to help him." "And how do you know his name is Atlas?" "That's not the name the bad people gave him," Zoe said, her face darkening in a way that no 4-year-olds should. "They called him something ugly. Atlas is his true name. It means someone who carries heavy things. He's carried heavy things for a long time." Emma felt that same chill again. "What bad people, Zoe? The teenagers?" Zoe shook her head. "The man with the scar on his hand. The one who makes dogs fight until they die." Emma nearly dropped her fork. "Zoe, how could you possibly know that?" "Atlas showed me," Zoe said simply. "In his memories. There were other dogs too. Ones who didn't come back." Later that night, after tucking Zoe into bed with strict instructions to let Atlas sleep, Emma sat at her kitchen table with a glass of wine, her hand shaking slightly as she called Max. "You did what?" Her husband's voice exploded through the phone after she explained the day's events. "Emma, have you lost your mind? A fighting dog around our daughter?" "You didn't see them together, Max," Emma said quietly. I can't explain it. He's completely gentle with her. Until he's not. What if he has a flashback or gets triggered? And who's going to take care of this dog when you're at work? We can't afford doggy daycare on top of Zoe's preschool." "I'll figure it out," Emma said, a steely determination in her voice that surprised even her. "This is important." "Important? More important than our daughter's safety? Max demanded. She's safer with him than without him, Emma said with sudden conviction. I can't explain it, but it's true. Their argument continued in circles until Max finally sighed in defeat. This conversation isn't over. My flight gets in Friday. We'll talk then. Emma hung up and pressed her fingers to her temples, fighting off a stress headache. The events of the day swirled in her mind like leaves caught in a whirlpool. Zoe's uncanny connection with Atlas, the strange man taking photos, Zoe's disturbing knowledge of Atlas's past, the partial microchip. Something didn't add up. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sound from Zoe's room, not barking or growling, but the soft murmur of her daughter's voice. Quietly, Emma crept down the hallway and peered through the cracked door. Zoe was sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Atlas, her hand resting lightly on his head. She was speaking to him in low, serious tones, not the sing-song voice she used with her stuffed animals or the exaggerated enunciation she used when reading her picture books. I won't let them find you, Zoe was saying. I promise. The man with the scar doesn't own you anymore. You're my Atlas now. The dog's eyes, intelligent beyond any animal Emma had ever seen, seemed to understand every word, his tail that thumped weakly against the blanket in acknowledgement. The others are still there in the cold place, Zoe continued, her voice dropping even lower. But we'll help them too, somehow. Emma backed away from the door, her heart racing. Either her daughter had an extraordinary imagination, or something truly unexplainable was happening in her home. That night, Emma barely slept, listening for any sound of distress from Zoe's room. But the house remained peaceful until dawn, when she was awakened by the sound of Zoe's delighted giggle. She rushed to her daughter's room to find Zoe sitting on the floor beside Atlas, who was attempting to lick her face despite his injuries. The sight was so normal, so wholesome, that for a moment Emma wondered if she had imagined the strangeness of the previous day. Look, Mommy, Atlas says good morning, Zoe beamed, and he's hungry. Emma relaxed slightly. Perhaps there was a simple explanation for everything. Children were intuitive, dogs were resilient, maybe that was all there was to it. But as she turned to go make breakfast, she caught Atlas watching her. The intelligence in his mismatched eyes made her breath catch. For just a moment, she could have sworn she saw something there. A recognition, an awareness that went far beyond animal instinct. Then he lowered his head to his paws, just an injured dog once more, and Emma was left wondering how much of yesterday's magic had been real, and how much had been her imagination running wild after an emotionally charged day. Come on, sweetheart, she said, pushing aside her unease. Let's get you both some breakfast. As she led Zoe to the kitchen, neither of them noticed the dark sedan rolling slowly past their house, or the man with the scarred hand watching their front door with narrowed eyes. Max Henderson's return from his business trip was marked by the sound of his suitcase hitting the floor with a heavy thud when he first saw Atlas sprawled on the living room rug beside Zoe. 3 days had passed since the rescue, and while Atlas still couldn't put weight on his injured leg, he had become Zoe's constant shadow around the house. What the hell, Emma? Max's voice was low, but tense, his eyes darting between the massive dog and his daughter. When you said you were fostering an abused dog, I didn't think it would be this. Atlas raised his head, his mismatched eyes assessing Max with an intelligence that made the man take an involuntary step backward. Daddy! Zoe abandoned her coloring book and ran to hug her father's legs. You're home. Come meet Atlas. He's my special friend. Max's face softened as he picked up his daughter, but his eyes remained wary. Hey, princess, I missed you. He kissed her forehead before setting her down and turning to Emma. Kitchen, now. Emma squeezed his arm as she passed. Give him a chance, Max. You'll see. In the kitchen, their voices dropped to urgent whispers, but Zoe didn't seem concerned. She returned to Atlas's side, resuming her drawing of what appeared to be a German shepherd wearing a superhero cape. He's not dangerous, Emma insisted, keeping her voice low. Dr. Lisa has been by twice, and Carlos from Animal Control checks in daily. He's never shown a single sign of aggression. He's a fighting dog, Emma. Max ran a hand through his dark hair in frustration. You can see it in those scars. That's not something you just get over. There's something special about him, Emma argued. The way he is with Zoe. It's like they understand each other on some level I can't explain. Max leaned against the counter, arms crossed. And that's another thing, these conversations Zoe claims to have with him. It's not healthy, Em. She's treating him like he's some kind of, I don't know, psychic dog or something. She's 4, Max. Of course she has an imagination. This goes beyond imagination. Max's voice rose slightly before he caught himself. Yesterday on the phone, she told me Atlas showed her where he used to live. Some underground place with cages. That's disturbing, Em. Where is she getting this stuff? Emma hesitated, unwilling to admit the eerie accuracy of some of Zoe's revelations about Atlas's past. Kids pick up more than we realize. She probably overheard something Carlos or Dr. Lisa said. What about your job? Who's watching him when you're at work and Zoe's at preschool? I've been bringing him to the clinic with me. Dr. Lisa thinks it's good for his recovery to be around caring people in a medical setting. Emma didn't add that the entire staff had fallen in love with Atlas, marveling at his gentle demeanor despite his obvious fighting background. Their conversation was interrupted by Zoe's appearance in the doorway, her small face unusually serious. Atlas is sad because you're fighting, she announced, and Daddy is afraid because he doesn't understand yet. Max knelt to his daughter's level. I'm not afraid, Princess. I just want to make sure everyone is safe. Zoe's blue eyes met his with startling clarity. Atlas would never hurt us. He's our protector now. That's his job. His job, huh? Max's tone softened, unable to resist his daughter's earnestness. Zoe nodded solemnly. He told me so. Max glanced up at Emma, who gave a small shrug as if to say, see what I mean? With a resigned sigh, Max followed his daughter back to the living room, where Atlas waited patiently. The dog made no move to approach, seeming to understand Max's apprehension. Atlas, this is my daddy, Zoe said formally, as if making a very important introduction. Daddy, this is Atlas. To Emma's surprise, Max slowly extended his hand, palm up, allowing Atlas to catch his scent. After a moment's consideration, Atlas gently licked his fingers. Well, Max said, a grudging smile tugging at his lips. I guess that's a start. Later that evening, after Zoe was tucked into bed, with Atlas lying vigilantly beside her bedroom door, Emma showed Max the care journal she'd been keeping. Page after page documented Atlas's medical treatments, behavioral observations, and remarkable recovery progress. Dr. Lisa says she's never seen anything like it, Emma explained. Fighting dogs usually take months of rehabilitation before they can be around children, if ever. But Atlas, it's like he knows he's been given a second chance. Max studied the photos Emma had taken, showing the dramatic improvement in Atlas's condition. The matted fur was now clean and beginning to regain its luster. The wounds were healing without infection. Even his eyes seemed brighter, more alive. And you said something about a microchip? Max asked, his tone less confrontational now. Emma nodded. It's damaged, but Dr. Lisa sent the partial information to her contacts. We might be able to trace where he came from originally. Before, she trailed off, not wanting to say, before the dog fighting, with Zoe, potentially within earshot. Max rubbed his temples. I still don't like this, Emma, but I can see how attached Zoe is already. He sighed heavily. 2 weeks. We give it 2 weeks, and if there's any sign at all, that he might be unstable, he goes to a proper rescue organization. Deal? Emma leaned over to kiss him. Deal, but you won't regret this, I promise. That night, Emma was awakened by a soft whimpering. Slipping out of bed, careful not to disturb Max, she padded down the hallway to find Atlas in the throes of what could only be described as a nightmare. His large body twitched, paws scrabbling against the floor, as if trying to run. Before Emma could decide whether to wake him, Zoe was there, kneeling beside the distressed dog in her princess nightgown. It's okay, Atlas, she whispered, stroking his head with a gentleness that made Emma's heart ache. You're not there anymore. You're here with me now. The bad men can't find you. Amazingly, Atlas calmed at her touch and voice, his breathing evening out as his eyes fluttered open. He licked Zoe's hand once, a gesture of such clear gratitude that Emma found herself blinking back tears. See, Mommy? Zoe looked up, unsurprised to find her mother watching. He has bad dreams about the fighting place. I know, sweetie, Emma said softly, kneeling beside her daughter, but he's safe now. Zoe's expression turned troubled. The others aren't safe, though. The one's still in the underground place. A chill ran through Emma. What underground place, Zoe? Where the bad man with the scar keeps the dogs that fight. Zoe's eyes took on that distant look that had become increasingly common. There are metal cages and a big ring with blood on the floor. Atlas says the bad man makes the dogs mean by hurting them and not feeding them. Then he makes them fight, and people watch and give him money. Emma struggled to keep her voice steady. How do you know all this, baby? I told you, Mommy. Atlas shows me. Zoe sounded slightly exasperated, as if explaining something obvious. In here, she tapped her temple. Emma swallowed hard. Do you see where this place is? What it looks like from the outside? Zoe concentrated for a moment, then shook her head. It's dark when they take the dogs in and out, but Atlas remembers trees and water nearby, and the sound of trains sometimes. The specificity sent another shiver down Emma's spine. Either Zoe had an extraordinarily vivid imagination, or no. Emma cut off that thought. There had to be a logical explanation. Let's get you back to bed, sweetie, she said, gently guiding Zoe back to her room. Atlas is fine now, see? No more bad dreams. Indeed, the dog appeared peaceful again, though his eyes followed them down the hallway with that same unnerving awareness. The next morning over breakfast, Emma debated whether to share Zoe's midnight revelations with Max. Before she could decide, the phone rang, Dr. Lisa calling with news. We got a partial match on Atlas's microchip, her colleague said without preamble. He was registered to a family in Oak Ridge about 2 years ago, the Wilsons. They reported him stolen from their backyard. Stolen? Emma felt a surge of hope. If Atlas had been a beloved family pet before falling into the hands of dogfighters, that would explain his gentle disposition, despite his trauma. I've contacted them, Dr. Lisa continued. But Emma, they seemed strange when I mentioned we found their dog. Almost afraid. They asked a lot of questions about who found him and where. Then they said they'd moved on and gotten a new dog. They don't want him back. Emma frowned. That doesn't make sense. Who wouldn't want their stolen pet returned? Exactly, Dr. Lisa's voice lowered. And there's something else. When I mentioned his injuries were consistent with dogfighting, the husband got very quiet, then said they had to go. Hung up immediately. You think they know something about the dogfighting ring? I don't know, but I've passed the information to Carlos. He's going to contact the Oak Ridge police. See if there have been any investigations into illegal dogfighting operations in that area. After ending the call, Emma watched Zoe and Atlas in the backyard through the kitchen window. There was such natural harmony between them. Zoe chattering away, Atlas listening with what appeared to be genuine comprehension. Occasionally, Zoe would laugh at something only she could hear, as if Atlas had told her a joke. The more Emma observed them, the harder it became to dismiss the connection as mere childhood fantasy. But the alternative was so far beyond her understanding that she could barely allow herself to consider it. Her thoughts were interrupted by Max entering the kitchen, dressed for his first day back at work. Everything okay? He asked, noticing her distracted expression. Emma filled him in on Dr. Lisa's call. It's strange, right? Why would the original owners not want him back? And why would they sound afraid? Max frowned, pouring himself coffee. Maybe they were involved somehow, or maybe they're afraid of whoever stole him coming back. Maybe, Emma agreed, though neither explanation felt quite right. I'm going to be late tonight, Max said, checking his watch. Big client meeting. Will you two be okay with Sir Atlas the Brave? His tone was lighter now, the nickname evidence of his gradually softening stance toward their foster dog. Emma smiled. We'll be fine. He's actually been good company. After Max left for work, Emma spent the morning working from home, occasionally glancing up from her laptop to check on Zoe and Atlas in the backyard. Around noon, she was startled by a sharp, authoritative bark from Atlas, the first time she'd heard him make more than a soft whine or whimper. Looking up, she saw Atlas standing stiffly at the back fence, his hackles raised as he stared intently at something beyond the yard. Zoe stood behind him, her small hand buried in his fur. Emma rushed outside. What is it, sweetie? There was a man looking over the fence, Zoe said, her voice small. Atlas didn't like him. Emma felt her heart rate accelerate as she scanned the neighboring yards and the alley beyond their fence. Nothing seemed out of place, but Atlas remained vigilant, his body positioning itself protectively between Zoe and whatever potential threat he'd detected. Let's go inside for lunch, Emma said, trying to keep her tone casual as she ushered Zoe toward the house. Atlas followed, but not before casting one last wary glance at the fence. Later that afternoon, Emma drove Zoe to her weekly art class at the community center, with Atlas lying across the back seat. Dr. Lisa had suggested that controlled outings would help with his rehabilitation, and Emma found herself increasingly reluctant to leave him home alone. As they pulled into the parking lot, Emma noticed Zoe staring intently out the window at a black SUV parked across the street. "What is it, sweetie?" she asked, following her daughter's gaze. "That's the bad man's car," Zoe said quietly. Emma felt her blood run cold. "What bad man, Zoe?" "The one with the scar on his hand. The one who hurt Atlas." Zoe's voice was matter-of-fact, but her small body had tensed. In the back seat, Atlas raised his head, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Emma scanned the SUV but could see no one inside. It was just a black SUV, common enough that it could belong to anyone. And yet, "Let's skip art class today," she decided impulsively. "How about we go visit Mommy's work instead? I bet Dr. Lisa would love to see how well Atlas is doing." Zoe nodded, her eyes never leaving the black vehicle, as Emma made a U-turn and headed toward the veterinary clinic. At work, Emma pulled Dr. Lisa aside while their receptionist, Hannah, entertained Zoe and Atlas in the empty waiting room. "I think someone might be watching us," Emma admitted, feeling slightly foolish even as she said it. "A black SUV that Zoe says belongs to the bad man with the scar. The same car might have driven by our house the day we brought Atlas home." To her relief, Dr. Lisa didn't dismiss her concerns. "The dog-fighting world is dangerous, Emma. These people see their fighting dogs as investments. An animal like Atlas, one trained for fighting but with an unusually gentle temperament, would be valuable for breeding." "You think they want him back?" Emma's voice rose in alarm. "But why now? Why didn't they come looking for him right after he disappeared?" "Maybe they did, but couldn't find him. Or maybe there's something special about Atlas specifically." Dr. Lisa hesitated. "Emma, this connection Zoe claims to have with him, has she said anything else? Anything that seems impossible for her to know?" Emma bit her lip. "She describes a fighting arena underground, with cages. Says there are trees and water nearby, and sometimes the sound of trains. She talks about a man with a scar on his hand who runs it." Dr. Lisa's expression grew troubled. "That's remarkably specific. You don't actually believe she's, what, communicating with Atlas somehow?" Emma couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice, despite her own growing suspicions. "I'm not saying that," Dr. Lisa said carefully, "but I've been a vet for 20 years, and I've never seen a bond like theirs form so quickly, and Atlas is unusual. His intelligence, his adaptability despite his trauma. It's extraordinary." Before Emma could respond, Hannah appeared in the doorway, her face pale. "Emma, there's a man here asking about Atlas. Says he's from an animal rescue specializing in rehabilitating fighting dogs. Wants to know if we've treated any recently." Emma exchanged an alarmed glance with Dr. Lisa. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing yet. Said I needed to check with the vet. He's still out front." Dr. Lisa moved to the reception area's one-way window and peered through. Emma joined her, careful to stay out of sight. The man waiting in the lobby was expensively dressed, with a neatly trimmed beard and sunglasses perched on top of his head. Nothing about him screamed, "dangerous dogfighting ring operator," until he drummed his fingers impatiently on the counter, and Emma caught sight of a jagged scar running across the back of his right hand. "That's him," Emma whispered, her heart hammering. "Zoe's bad man with the scar." Dr. Lisa's expression hardened. "Hannah, tell him we haven't treated any fighting dogs. Then call Carlos at Animal Control and tell him to get over here immediately." "Where's Zoe?" Emma asked suddenly, panic rising as she realized her daughter wasn't in the waiting area. "In the break room with Atlas," Hannah assured her. "Marcy's with them." Emma sagged with relief, then tensed again as a new thought struck her. "What if he recognizes my car in the parking lot?" "Go out the back way," Dr. Lisa decided. "Take my car." She pressed her keys into Emma's hand. "I'll call you when he's gone. And Emma, be careful. Maybe stay somewhere else tonight, just in case." Emma nodded gratefully and slipped down the hallway to the break room, where she found Zoe sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Atlas, drawing with crayons provided by Marcy, the vet assistant. "We need to go, sweetheart," Emma said, forcing a smile. "Dr. Lisa is letting us borrow her car for a special errand." Zoe looked up, her eyes too knowing for a 4-year-old. "Is it because the bad man is here?" "We're just being extra careful," Emma said, helping Zoe gather her things. "Like a secret mission." That seemed to appeal to Zoe, who nodded seriously and whispered something to Atlas. The dog rose immediately, positioning himself between Zoe and the door with an alertness that both reassured and unnerved Emma. They slipped out through the clinic's rear entrance, Emma scanning the parking lot nervously before hurrying to Dr. Lisa's blue sedan. As they pulled onto the street, Emma caught sight of the black SUV parked directly behind her own car. "Where are we going, Mommy?" Zoe asked from the back seat, her hand resting on Atlas's head. Emma realized she hadn't thought that far ahead. They couldn't go home. That would be the first place the scarred man would look if he was indeed searching for Atlas. Max was in meetings all day. Her parents lived 3 hours away. "We're going on an adventure," Emma said with false brightness, pulling out her phone to text Max one-handed as she drove. "Just for tonight." They ended up at the Pine Creek Inn, a modest motel on the outskirts of town. Emma paid cash for the room, giving a false name and making up a story about home renovations making their house temporarily unlivable. If the desk clerk thought it odd that their only luggage was a large German shepherd, he didn't comment. Once inside the room, Emma finally allowed herself to breathe. She'd texted Max the situation and their location, sworn Dr. Lisa and her staff to secrecy, and made sure they weren't followed. For now, at least, they were safe. Zoe seemed to take the unexpected adventure in stride, happily bouncing on the bed while Atlas settled himself vigilantly by the door, his ears perked for any unusual sounds. "Atlas says we're safe here," Zoe announced, "but the bad man won't stop looking." Emma sat beside her daughter on the bed. "Zoe, how do you know about the bad man?" "Really?" Zoe gave her mother the patient look of a child, explaining something obvious to an adult. "I told you, Mommy. Atlas shows me, in my head, like pictures and feelings." "Since when can you see what Atlas shows you?" Zoe considered this. "Since always, I think. But Atlas is the first dog who has so many important things to show me." She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Some of the things are scary, but Atlas says I'm brave enough to know." I wonder what secrets Atlas is showing her about the man with the scar. If you could communicate with animals, what would you ask them? Emma paced the motel room, checking her phone every few minutes for updates from Dr. Lisa or Max. Atlas remained at his post by the door, his vigilance unwavering despite his still healing injuries. Zoe had fallen asleep on the bed, exhausted by the day's excitement and fear. When Max finally called, Emma answered before the first ring completed. "Are you all okay?" His voice was tight with worry. "We're fine," Emma assured him, keeping her voice low. "We're at the Pine Creek Inn, room 114. I paid cash, used a different name." "Smart," Max said, and she could hear the relief in his voice. "I'm leaving work now. Be there in 20 minutes. And Emma, I called a friend at the police department, Detective Rivera. I told him everything." Emma closed her eyes, a wave of relief washing over her. "Thank you." While waiting for Max, Emma sat beside Atlas, her fingers absently stroking his fur. "Who are you, really?" she whispered. "What's happening here?" Atlas turned his mismatched eyes to her, and for a moment, Emma had the disconcerting sensation that he was trying to answer. Max arrived with a change of clothes for all of them, and takeout from their favorite Chinese restaurant. Detective Rivera would meet them in the morning, he explained, as they ate dinner on the motel bed, with Zoe now awake and happily dipping egg rolls in sweet and sour sauce. "He's taking this seriously," Max assured them, "especially after I showed him the photos of Atlas's injuries and mentioned the microchip connection to the Wilsons in Oak Ridge." Just as they were finishing dinner, Emma's phone rang, Dr. Lisa calling with an update.
"He's gone," her colleague said without preamble. "Left right after you did. But Emma, he knew it was you. Asked specifically if I'd treated a German shepherd brought in by Emma Henderson." Emma's blood ran cold. "How could he know my name?"
"I don't know, but there's more. Carlos came by after the man left and looked at our security footage. He recognized him. Victor Stone." Stone? The name meant nothing to Emma. Victor Stone is a legitimate businessman on paper, owns several properties around Pine Creek and Oak Ridge, but Carlos says there have been rumors for years about underground dogfighting rings connected to Stone. Nothing's ever been proven. Emma glanced at Atlas, who had raised his head at the mention of Stone's name. Beside him, Zoe had gone very still, her small face suddenly pale. "That's him," Zoe whispered. "That's the bad man's name, the one who hurt Atlas." Emma's skin prickled. She hadn't said the name aloud. Zoe shouldn't have heard it from the phone call. "Honey, how do you—" "Atlas knows him," Zoe said simply. "He's the boss of the fighting place." After ending the call with Dr. Lisa, Emma turned to her husband. Stone came looking for Atlas specifically. He knew my name. This isn't random, Max. Max's expression was grim. We'll figure it out. For tonight, we're safe here. I've got my car parked around back, and I've already spoken to the night manager. He'll call if anyone comes asking about us. That night, they all slept fitfully in the cramped motel room. Emma and Max took turns keeping watch, while Atlas dozed lightly at the foot of the bed where Zoe slept, his body positioned between the door and the child. Morning brought Detective Rivera, a serious-faced man with kind eyes who listened cheerfully as Emma and Max explained everything, from finding Atlas to Stone's appearance at the vet clinic. "And you say your daughter somehow knows things about Stone and the dogfighting operation?" Rivera asked, his expression neutral as he glanced at Zoe, who was drawing quietly in the corner with Atlas beside her. Emma hesitated. "It sounds crazy, I know, but she describes details she couldn't possibly know. An underground facility with cages, near water, and train tracks." Rivera made a note. "That's consistent with rumors we've heard about Stone's operation. His main property in Oak Ridge backs up to the river, and there's a freight line about half a mile away." He leaned forward. "Mrs. Henderson, Mr. Henderson, I need to be clear about something. Victor Stone is a dangerous man. If he's personally looking for your dog, there's a reason." "What do we do?" Max asked, his arm tightening around Emma's shoulders. "For now, stay somewhere Stone wouldn't think to look. Do you have family out of town?" Emma nodded. "My parents live in Fairview, about 3 hours from here." "Go there," Rivera suggested. "Take a few days off work. Let me see what I can find out about Stone's interest in your dog." As they packed up the few belongings Max had brought, Zoe approached Detective Rivera with one of her drawings. "This is the bad place," she said solemnly, handing him the paper, "where Atlas and the other dogs had to fight." Rivera studied the drawing with a carefully neutral expression, but Emma saw his eyebrows rise slightly. The picture showed an underground room with cage-like structures arranged around a central pit. Stairs led up to what appeared to be a trap door. Outside, Zoe had drawn trees, a wavy blue line suggesting water, and parallel lines that might be train tracks. "That's very detailed," Rivera said carefully. "Did Atlas show you this?" Zoe nodded. "In my head. There are still other dogs there. They're scared." Rivera glanced at Emma and Max, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, Zoe. This is very helpful." As they prepared to leave for Emma's parents' house, Rivera pulled them aside. "I'll call as soon as I know anything. In the meantime, be careful. Don't use credit cards if you can avoid it. Don't post on social media. And maybe," he hesitated, "maybe take what your daughter says seriously. Whatever's happening here, it's beyond the ordinary." The drive to Fairview was tense, with Emma constantly checking the rearview mirror for signs of being followed. Atlas sat in the back seat beside Zoe, his attention divided between the child and the world outside the windows. Occasionally, he would grow alert, ears forward, causing Emma and Max to scan the surrounding traffic nervously. Emma's parents welcomed them with surprised delight, though their expressions grew increasingly concerned as Emma explained a sanitized version of the situation, that they were fostering an abused dog whose previous owner was causing trouble. "We just need a few days away while the police sort things out," Emma finished, watching her father kneel to greet Atlas with gentle hands. "Of course you'll stay," her mother said firmly, "for as long as you need." That night, after Zoe was tucked into the guest bedroom, with Atlas as her guardian, Emma and Max sat at her parents' kitchen table, speaking in low voices. "What if Stone doesn't give up?" Emma wondered, cradling a mug of tea between her hands. "We can't hide forever." Max's face was set in determined lines. If Detective Rivera can prove Stone's connection to dogfighting, he won't be a problem anymore. Until then, we keep Atlas safe. Emma smiled weakly. "When did you become Atlas's biggest defender? I thought you didn't want a dog." "That was before I saw him with Zoe," Max admitted. "Before I saw how he looks at her, like he'd die to keep her safe." He reached for Emma's hand. "And I've been thinking about what Zoe says, about communicating with him. You don't actually believe—" "I don't know what to believe," Max cut in. "But she knows things, Em. Things she couldn't possibly know. And Atlas, he's not like any dog I've ever met." The peaceful refuge of Emma's parents' home lasted 3 days before the storm found them. Emma was helping her mother prepare dinner when her father called from the front porch, his voice sharp with alarm. "Emma, There's someone coming up the drive. Emma rushed to the window, her heart sinking as she recognized the sleek black SUV crunching up the gravel driveway. It's him, she whispered. How did he find us? Her mother took immediate charge. Get Zoe and Atlas, go out the back way, take the old hiking trail through the woods to the Miller place. They're away in Florida, but the key's under the blue pot by the back door. We'll handle this. Before Emma could even process these instructions, Zoe appeared in the doorway, Atlas at her side. The dog's hackles were raised, a low growl building in his chest. The bad man is here, Zoe said, her voice eerily calm. Atlas says we need to run. Emma didn't question it. She grabbed Zoe's hand, snatched her mother's car keys from the hook by the door, and headed for the back of the house. Max met them in the hallway, his face grim. Go, he said. I'll help your parents stall him. Max. I'll be right behind you, he promised, kissing her quickly before turning back toward the front of the house. Emma led Zoe and Atlas through the back door and across the large yard to the edge of the woods. The old hiking trail was barely visible, overgrown from years of disuse, but Emma remembered it from her childhood. She lifted Zoe into her arms, knowing the child's short legs couldn't navigate the rough terrain quickly enough. Follow Atlas, Zoe said with certainty. He knows the way. And somehow, he did. The German Shepherd moved with purpose along the trail, occasionally glancing back to ensure they were following. Despite his still healing injuries, he moved with fluid grace through the trees. They had gone perhaps half a mile when the sound of an engine revving reached them. Through gaps in the foliage, Emma could see the black SUV bouncing along an access road that paralleled the hiking trail. He knows where we're going, Emma realized with horror. Somehow he knows. Atlas abruptly changed direction, veering off the trail into denser undergrowth. Without hesitation, Emma followed, ducking under low-hanging branches and pushing through ferns and bushes. The noise of the SUV faded as they moved deeper into the woods. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, they emerged from the trees onto the banks of a small lake. On the opposite shore sat a modest cabin, weathered by years of sun and rain. The fishing cabin, Emma breathed. She had forgotten about this place, a small retreat her father had built decades ago, rarely used now that he had grown older. Atlas led them along the shoreline to the cabin. The door was locked, but Emma remembered the spare key hidden in a fake rock beside the steps. Inside was dusty but secure, a single room with basic amenities and no phone line or internet. We'll be safe here for a little while, Emma told Zoe, setting her down on the threadbare couch. Daddy and Grandma and Grandpa will find us when it's safe. Zoe nodded solemnly, then turned to Atlas. He wants to know if you called the policeman. Emma blinked. Detective Rivera? No, She patted her pockets, realizing with dismay that in their rush to escape, she had left her phone behind. Atlas says we need to tell him about the bad place, Zoe continued, before the bad man moves all the dogs. Emma knelt before her daughter. Zoe, honey, how does Atlas know these things? How do you understand him? Zoe tilted her head, considering the question. It's like pictures in my head, and feelings, sometimes words but not like talking, more like knowing. Has this happened before, with other animals? Zoe nodded. Sometimes, but not like with Atlas. He has so many important things to tell. A sound outside made them both freeze. Atlas moved to the window, his posture alert but not alarmed. A moment later, there was a soft knock at the door. Emma? Zoe, it's Dad. Relief flooded through Emma as she rushed to let her father in. He entered quickly, his face flushed from exertion. Are you both okay? He asked, checking them over with anxious eyes. We're fine, Emma assured him. What happened? Where's Mom and Max? They're fine too. The police came. Your Detective Rivera. Apparently Max called him before you left the house. Stone's been detained for questioning. He glanced at Atlas, who had relaxed at the mention of Rivera. That's one remarkable dog you've got there. Emma managed a weak smile. You have no idea. As they prepared to return to her parents' house, Emma's father pulled her aside. Emma, there's something else. When Stone came looking for you, he wasn't just asking about the dog. He asked specifically about Zoe, too. A cold fear gripped Emma's heart. Zoe? Why would he care about Zoe? Her father shook his head. I don't know, but he seemed almost as interested in her as in the dog. Said something about them being connected now. Back at the house, they found Detective Rivera waiting with Max and Emma's mother. The detective's face was serious as he motioned for Emma and Max to join him at the kitchen table, while Emma's parents took Zoe to get cleaned up. "We had to release Stone," Rivera said without preamble. "Not enough evidence to hold him, but we've got officers watching his property in Oak Ridge, and we've started proceedings to get a search warrant." "He found us here," Emma said. "How? We were so careful." Rivera's expression darkened. "That's what concerns me. You used cash, avoided credit cards, didn't tell anyone where you were going. The most likely explanation is that he had someone following you from the motel." "What does he want with Atlas?" Max asked. "And why is he asking about Zoe?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." Rivera leaned forward. "The most obvious explanation is that Atlas is valuable breeding stock. Fighting dogs that can produce champion offspring sell for thousands." "But why the interest in Zoe?" Emma pressed. Rivera hesitated. "This is going to sound strange, but there are rumors about Stone's operation, not just standard dogfighting. Some people claim he's been experimenting, trying to breed dogs with enhanced abilities, heightened intelligence, improved fighting instincts, even," he paused, clearly uncomfortable, "even supposed psychic abilities." "Psychic dogs?" Max couldn't keep the disbelief from his voice. "That's absurd." "Of course it is," Rivera agreed, "but Stone believes it. And if he thinks your daughter can communicate with Atlas in some way—" Emma and Max exchanged troubled glances. "We got a partial warrant to examine Stone's veterinary records," Rivera continued. "He has a private vet on payroll, Dr. Garrett. The records show something interesting about Atlas, or Warlock, as Stone called him. He was part of something called Project Sentinel, apparently some kind of breeding program. The notes mention enhanced cognitive function and telepathic potential." "That's insane," Max said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Stone's been working on this for years," Rivera went on, "buying up dogs with specific genetic traits, carefully breeding them, using unorthodox training methods." His expression made it clear that unorthodox was a severe understatement. Atlas was apparently his greatest success, until the dog refused to fight. The records show he was scheduled for termination when he mysteriously disappeared from the facility. "He escaped?" Emma whispered. "Or someone helped him escape," Rivera suggested. "Either way, Stone wants him back. Badly. And now he's interested in Zoe too, because of this supposed connection between them." "What do we do?" Emma asked, fear turning her voice brittle. "We're working on getting a full search warrant for Stone's property," Rivera assured them. "If we can find evidence of the dogfighting operation, we can put him away for a long time. But until then—" he hesitated. "Until then, you need to be careful, very careful. Stone isn't the type to give up easily." Later that evening, after sharing a quiet dinner with Emma's parents, the family gathered in the living room. Atlas lay at Zoe's feet while she showed her grandparents her drawings, most featuring a heroic German shepherd, saving other dogs from cages. Emma watched her daughter, Rivera's words echoing in her mind. Enhanced cognitive function, telepathic potential. It sounded like science fiction, and yet, hadn't she seen the evidence herself? The way Atlas understood complex situations, his protective instincts that went beyond normal canine behavior, the inexplicable bond with Zoe. "We should head back to Pine Creek tomorrow," Max said quietly, sitting beside Emma on the sofa. "Rivera says it's safe, and we have to get back to work eventually." Emma nodded reluctantly. "I just don't want Stone anywhere near Zoe or Atlas." "Rivera's assigned a patrol to drive by our house regularly," Max assured her, "and I've already ordered a security system. It'll be installed tomorrow afternoon." The next morning, they packed up and prepared for the journey home. Emma's parents urged them to stay longer, but both Emma and Max needed to return to work, and Zoe was missing her preschool friends. As they loaded the car, Emma noticed Atlas standing very still at the edge of the driveway, his attention fixed on the road leading to the house. "What is it, boy?" she asked, moving to his side. A moment later, a police cruiser appeared, Detective Rivera at the wheel. He parked behind their car and approached with long strides, his expression unreadable. "I was just coming to see you," he said without preamble. "We got the search warrant for Stone's property. The raid is happening this afternoon." Hope surged in Emma's chest. "You'll find the fighting ring, the other dogs?" "If they're there, yes." Rivera's face was grim. "But there's something else you should know. Stone has filed legal papers claiming ownership of Atlas. He has documentation, breeding records, the original microchip registration, vet records. On paper, at least, the dog belongs to him. That's impossible, Max protested. The Wilsons were the registered owners. According to Stone, he sold the dog to the Wilsons as a puppy, with a contract stipulating that Stone retained breeding rights. When the dog disappeared from the Wilsons' yard, Stone claims they violated the contract by not informing him immediately. Rivera ran a hand through his hair in frustration. It's all legal maneuvering, but it could create complications. He can't have Atlas. Zoe's small voice came from behind them. She stood in the doorway, her face set in stubborn lines. He hurts dogs. He's a bad man. Rivera knelt to Zoe's level. I know, sweetheart, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure Atlas stays with you. But I need you to help me. Can you tell me more about the place where the dogs are kept? Anything Atlas has shown you that might help us find them? Zoe considered this, her expression serious beyond her years. There's a door hidden in the floor of a big shed. It has a special lock with numbers. The bad place is underneath, with cages all around the walls and the fighting pit in the middle. She closed her eyes, as if visualizing something. There are 10 dogs there now. 2 are hurt bad. There's a room with medicines and needles where the doctor works. Rivera wrote everything down, his expression carefully neutral. What about the code for the lock? Did Atlas show you that? Zoe shook her head. But there's another way in, through the water pipes. Atlas escaped that way. It's scary and dark, but it goes to the river. That makes sense, Rivera mused, almost to himself. The property does back up to the river. We'll check for drainage pipes or some kind of water access. As Rivera prepared to leave, he addressed Emma and Max one more time. I'd suggest postponing your return to Pine Creek until after the raid. We'll know more then. In the meantime, stay vigilant. After the detective left, Emma and Max decided to remain at her parents' house for one more day. The afternoon crept by with agonizing slowness as they waited for news from Rivera. Atlas seemed to share their anxiety, pacing restlessly between Zoe and the windows. Finally, as evening approached, Rivera called with an update. We found it, he said, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Everything was exactly where Zoe said it would be. The hidden entrance in the shed floor, the underground fighting pit, the cages. We rescued 8 dogs and found evidence of many more that had been there previously. And Stone? Max asked. In custody, along with his veterinarian and 3 associates. The charges are substantial: animal cruelty, illegal gambling, tax evasion. His lawyer is already working on bail, but given the severity of the charges, I doubt he'll get it. Relief swept through Emma, making her knees weak. So, it's over? We're safe? There was a pause on the line. Almost. We're still processing the evidence, but we found something concerning. Files on your family, Emma. Photos of your house, Zoe's preschool, notes about your work schedule. Stone has been watching you for days, long before you even knew he was looking for Atlas. A chill ran through Emma. Why? What does he want with us? I'm still trying to figure that out, but there's more. We found research notes, scientific papers, experimental records. Stone was convinced he'd bred a dog with actual telepathic abilities in Atlas, and he believed that certain people, particularly children, could access those abilities.
That's why he was interested in Zoe, Emma whispered.
Exactly. In his warped mind, your daughter and Atlas share some kind of psychic bond that makes them both extremely valuable to him. Rivera's voice hardened. The man is clearly delusional, but that makes him all the more dangerous. What do we do now? Max asked. Come home, Rivera said. Stone's in custody and his operation is shut down. You'll need to make formal statements, and there will be legal proceedings regarding Atlas's ownership. But I'm confident we can prove Stone's claims are fraudulent, especially now that we have evidence of the dogfighting. That night, Emma lay awake long after Max had fallen asleep, her mind churning with everything they had learned. Quietly, she slipped out of bed and down the hall to the guest room, where Zoe slept with Atlas at the foot of her bed. The dog lifted his head as Emma entered, his mismatched eyes gleaming in the darkness. Without disturbing Zoe, Emma sat on the floor beside him, her hand finding the soft fur between his ears. Is it true? She whispered. Can you really communicate somehow? Show Zoe things about your past? Atlas tilted his head, regarding her with that uncanny intelligence. Slowly, deliberately, he placed his paw on her hand and held her gaze. In that moment, Emma felt something. Not words or images exactly, but a sense of understanding, a connection that transcended the barrier between human and animal, a feeling of gratitude, of loyalty, of fierce protection. Whether it was her imagination or something truly extraordinary, Emma couldn't say. But as she looked into Atlas's eyes, one thing became absolutely clear. This remarkable dog had chosen them as his family, and he would do anything to keep them safe. Do you believe animals can communicate with us in ways science hasn't explained yet? What's the most incredible connection you've ever felt with an animal? The Henderson family returned home the following day, greeted by the comforting familiarity of their small house. The newly installed security system beeped softly as Max entered the code, providing an added layer of reassurance. Detective Rivera had arranged for a patrol car to drive by every few hours, a precaution that felt necessary despite Stone's incarceration. "Home, sweet home," Max announced with forced cheerfulness, setting down their bags in the entryway. Atlas moved through the house methodically, sniffing each room as if checking for intruders before finally settling near Zoe as she unpacked her toys. "He says everything's okay," Zoe reported, not looking up from her stuffed animals. "No bad people have been here." Emma and Max exchanged glances, but said nothing. They had reached an unspoken agreement not to question Zoe's connection with Atlas too deeply, at least not yet. Whether it was an extraordinary child's imagination or something truly unexplainable, the bond between the dog and their daughter was undeniable. Life attempted to return to normal. Emma went back to work at the veterinary clinic, bringing Atlas with her each day. Max resumed his job at the accounting firm. Zoe returned to preschool, though Emma arranged with the teachers to keep a special watch over her. The criminal case against Stone progressed, with Detective Rivera keeping them updated. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just the underground fighting ring and abused animals, but financial records showing illegal gambling operations that stretched across 3 states. "He's not getting bail," Rivera assured them over coffee at their kitchen table one evening, a week after their return. "Too much flight risk, too much evidence. The prosecutor is confident this will put him away for at least 15 years. "What about the other men?" Emma asked. "The ones who worked for him?" "2 have made deals to testify against Stone," Rivera said. "The veterinarian, Dr. Garrett, is still holding out, but we're working on him." "And Atlas?" Max asked the question they had all been avoiding. "What happens with Stone's legal claim?" Rivera's expression softened. Given the circumstances, Stone's arrest, the dogfighting evidence, his ownership claim doesn't stand a chance. But you'll need to go through formal adoption procedures once the case concludes. Foster status won't be enough long term. As Rivera prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. "There's one more thing you should know. We found more research notes at Stone's property, journals, experimental records. He was obsessed with the idea of breeding dogs with enhanced abilities, particularly what he called cross-species telepathy." "And he believes Atlas has this ability?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. Rivera nodded. According to his notes, Atlas was the culmination of years of selective breeding, the perfect subject, highly intelligent, empathetic, with brainwave patterns that Stone claimed were unique. He shook his head. "It sounds like science fiction, but Stone spent millions on this research. He truly believed he'd succeeded with Atlas." After the detective left, Emma found herself studying Atlas with new eyes as he lay beside Zoe on the living room floor, watching her color. The dog met her gaze steadily, his mismatched eyes intelligent and somehow knowing. Was it possible? Could Stone's delusional experiments have actually produced something extraordinary? Or was it simply the special bond that sometimes formed between children and animals, enhanced by Zoe's natural empathy and imagination? Emma was still pondering these questions 3 nights later when the storm hit. It rolled in suddenly after dark, a violent spring thunderstorm that knocked out power across Pine Creek. Max was working late, caught up in end-of-quarter reports that couldn't wait for morning. "It's okay, sweetie," Emma reassured Zoe as another crack of thunder shook the windows. "The storm can't hurt us inside the house." Zoe didn't seem particularly frightened, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with a flashlight propped beside her as she played with her dolls. Atlas, however, was unusually alert, his body tense as he moved between the windows and the front door. "Atlas is worried," Zoe said, looking up from her toys. "Not about the storm. He says someone's coming." A chill ran through Emma. "Who's coming, Zoe?" "The doctor. The one who put the needles in the dogs. He works for the bad man." Zoe's voice was matter-of-fact, but her small hands gripped her doll tightly. Atlas can smell him. Emma's heart began to race. She reached for her phone to call Max, but the signal showed only one weak bar, the storm interfering with reception. Her call to Max went straight to voicemail. Next, she tried Detective Rivera with the same result. Moving quickly, Emma checked that all doors and windows were locked, and the security system was armed. Then she grabbed the flashlight and Zoe's hand. "We're going to play a game, sweetie, a hiding game, like hide and seek, but very quiet." Zoe nodded solemnly, already understanding more than any 4-year-old should. "Atlas says we should hide in the bathroom. It has no windows." Emma didn't question this advice. She led Zoe to the small bathroom off the hallway, bringing her phone, the flashlight, and a baseball bat Max kept in the hall closet. Atlas followed, his body language alert but controlled. They had just settled into the bathroom, the door locked behind them, when Emma heard it. The soft sound of breaking glass from somewhere in the house. "Stay very quiet," she whispered to Zoe, who nodded and hugged Atlas around his neck. The dog remained perfectly still, his ears perked forward as he listened to the intruder moving through the house. Heavy footsteps creaked along the hallway floor. A door opened. Zoe's bedroom, then another, the master bedroom. The footsteps paused, then slowly approached the bathroom. Emma raised the baseball bat, positioning herself between the door and Zoe. Atlas moved forward silently, his hackles raised, eyes fixed on the door. The handle turned, testing the lock. "I know you're in there, Mrs. Henderson," came a man's voice, smooth, educated, with a hint of impatience. "I'm Dr. Garrett. I just want to talk." Emma remained silent, her grip tightening on the bat. "It's about the dog, Atlas, as you call him, and your daughter." The voice softened. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. Stone sent me to verify something. Once I do, I'll leave. No one needs to get hurt." "Stone is in jail," Emma called through the door, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. "And the police are on their way." A low chuckle. "In this storm? I doubt you got a call out. And Stone may be in jail, but he still has resources. People who owe him favors." A pause. "I just need 5 minutes with the dog and the girl. A simple test. Then I'll go." "Go to hell," Emma hissed, fear giving way to protective fury. "Mrs. Henderson, you don't understand what you have there. That animal is worth millions, the result of 15 years of selective breeding and genetic research. And if your daughter can actually communicate with him, as Stone believes, that's beyond price." While he spoke, Emma noticed Zoe whispering something to Atlas, her small lips close to his ear. The dog's posture changed subtly, muscles tensing. "Last chance to do this the easy way," Dr. Garrett warned. "I have a tranquilizer gun. I don't want to use it, but I will if necessary." There was a momentary silence, then the unmistakable sound of a key sliding into the lock. Emma raised the bat higher, her heart hammering in her chest. The door began to open. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As the gap widened, Emma caught a glimpse of a tall man in a dark raincoat, his face half illuminated by the beam of a flashlight he held. In his other hand was what looked like a tranquilizer gun, pointed directly at Atlas. Before either Emma or Garrett could react, Atlas launched himself through the narrow opening with explosive force. His powerful body slammed into the man, knocking him backward into the hallway wall. The tranquilizer gun discharged with a soft pfft, the dart embedding itself harmlessly in the ceiling. Emma burst through the door after Atlas, bat raised, but there was no need for her intervention. Atlas had Garrett pinned to the floor, his teeth bared inches from the man's throat, a low growl emanating from deep in his chest. "Call him off," Garrett gasped, his earlier confidence evaporated. "Please." "Don't move," Emma ordered, heart racing as she fumbled with her phone. The signal was still weak, but this time her call to Max connected. "Emma, I can barely hear you." "Someone broke in," she cut in, words tumbling out. "Dr. Garrett. Stone sent him. Atlas has him pinned. Call Rivera." She ended the call and turned back to Garrett, who lay frozen beneath Atlas's threatening stance. "How did you get a key to our house?" Garrett's eyes darted nervously between Emma and the growling dog. "Stone has connections everywhere. Please, call off your dog." "He's not my dog," Emma said coldly. "According to you, he's Stone's valuable research subject. Maybe you should try asking him yourself." As if on cue, Atlas growled louder, causing Garrett to press himself harder against the floor. "The girl," Garrett said desperately. "She can control him. Please." "I don't control Atlas," came Zoe's small voice from the bathroom doorway. "He's my friend, and he remembers what you did to him. The needles, the tests, making him fight when he didn't want to." Garrett's face paled. "How could you possibly know that?" "He showed me," Zoe said simply. "He shows me lots of things, like how you hurt the other dogs when they wouldn't fight, like the special medicine you gave them to make them mean." "That's impossible," Garrett whispered, but his expression told a different story. Not disbelief, but confirmation of his deepest suspicions. "He knows what you did to his brother," Zoe continued, her voice taking on a strange, almost adult quality. "The white dog with the blue eyes. The one that died on your table when you gave him too much of the special medicine." Garrett's face went from pale to ashen. "No one knew about that. No one but Stone and me." Before anyone could respond, blue and red lights flashed through the windows, illuminating the hallway in rhythmic pulses. Moments later, the front door burst open, and Detective Rivera rushed in, gun drawn, followed by 2 uniformed officers. "Emma! Zoe!" Rivera called out. "Here!" Emma shouted back. "We're okay!" Rivera rounded the corner, taking in the scene with a practiced eye. Atlas still pinning Garrett to the floor, Emma with the bat, Zoe standing calmly in the bathroom doorway. "Daniel Garrett," Rivera said, holstering his weapon as the uniformed officers moved to secure the prone man. "You're under arrest for breaking and entering, attempted kidnapping, and violation of animal cruelty statutes." He glanced at Emma. "We'll probably think of more charges later." As the officers handcuffed Garrett and led him away, Rivera explained that Max had called him immediately after Emma's frantic call. "He's on his way home now," the detective assured her. "Are you both okay? Do you need medical attention?" Emma shook her head, kneeling to check Atlas for any injuries. The dog finally relaxed his vigilant posture, leaning against her with a soft whine. "He was very brave," Zoe said, joining them and wrapping her arms around Atlas's neck. "But his leg hurts again from jumping." Sure enough, Emma noticed Atlas favoring his previously injured hind leg. "We'll have Dr. Lisa check him in the morning," she promised, still marveling at Zoe's perception. After taking their statements and ensuring the house was secure, Rivera prepared to leave. "Garrett's arrest is another nail in Stone's coffin," he told Emma. "With his right-hand man caught in the act, Stone's network is falling apart. You should be safe now, but—" He hesitated. "Given what happened tonight, I'd like to arrange for an officer to stay outside until morning, just as a precaution." Emma readily agreed, the image of Garrett standing in their hallway with a tranquilizer gun still fresh in her mind. After Rivera left, with a patrol car parked visibly in front of their house, Emma tucked Zoe into bed. Atlas took up his usual position beside her, his body curled protectively around the small girl. "You were very brave tonight," Emma told her daughter, smoothing the blonde hair back from her forehead. "I wasn't scared," Zoe said sleepily. "Atlas wouldn't let anyone hurt us." Emma studied the dog, his intelligent eyes watching her from the bedside. "No," she agreed softly, "he wouldn't." Max arrived home half an hour later, rushing in with panic on his face, that only subsided when he found Emma sitting on the couch, a glass of much-needed wine in her hand. "Thank God," he breathed, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Rivera filled me in. Are you okay? Is Zoe?" "We're all fine," Emma assured him, "thanks to Atlas." Max sat beside her, running a hand through his hair. "I can't believe Garrett had a key to our house. How is that possible?" "Rivera thinks Stone might have connections with the company that installed our security system," Emma explained. "They're investigating now." They sat in silence for a moment, the magnitude of the night's events settling over them. "Emma," Max finally said, his voice low and serious, "we need to talk about what's happening here, about Zoe and Atlas." Emma nodded. She'd been avoiding this conversation, but after tonight, there was no more denying the extraordinary nature of the bond between their daughter and the German Shepherd. "Zoe told Garrett things she couldn't possibly know," Emma said quietly. "About a white dog with blue eyes that died during his experiments. Garrett confirmed no one knew about it except him and Stone." Max leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "So, what are we saying here? That our daughter can, what, read Atlas's mind? That Stone's crazy experiments actually worked?" "I don't know," Emma admitted. "It sounds impossible, but we've both seen it, Max. The way they communicate, the things she knows about his past." "If it's true," Max said slowly, "what does that mean for Zoe, for her future? It was a question Emma had been asking herself since the first day in the alley. I don't know that either, but I know that Atlas would do anything to protect her, and so would we. In the following weeks, life gradually returned to a new normal. Stone's case progressed through the legal system, with each new piece of evidence ensuring he wouldn't see freedom for many years. Dr. Garrett, facing his own charges, agreed to testify against his former employer in exchange for a reduced sentence. The news of the underground dogfighting ring and the rescue of the abused animals became a national story. Animal welfare organizations reached out to Emma, seeking interviews about Atlas and his remarkable journey. She declined most requests, protective of both Zoe's privacy and Atlas's recovery. Instead, Emma channeled her energy into helping the other dogs rescued from Stone's facility. With Dr. Lisa's support, she developed a rehabilitation program using the techniques that had worked so well with Atlas. Some of the dogs were too traumatized for adoption, but others showed promising signs of recovery. Through it all, the bond between Zoe and Atlas only strengthened. Emma and Max no longer questioned it, accepting the unique connection as part of their family's new reality. They established boundaries. Zoe was not to talk about her conversations with Atlas outside the family, but otherwise allowed the relationship to flourish naturally. 3 months after Garrett's arrest, Detective Rivera visited with important news. The court has officially terminated Stone's claim to Atlas, he announced, presenting Emma and Max with formal documentation. You're free to adopt him permanently. The adoption ceremony at the animal shelter was small but emotional. Zoe solemnly pinned a new tag to Atlas's collar, one bearing their family name and phone number. Atlas sat perfectly still during the procedure, his mismatched eyes following Zoe with devotion. It's official, Emma told him, kneeling to ruffle the fur that had grown thick and glossy during his months with them. You're stuck with us now. As if understanding every word, Atlas pressed his head against her hand, then moved to do the same with Max before settling beside Zoe, his rightful place. That night, as Emma passed Zoe's bedroom, she paused at the partially open door. Inside, her daughter sat cross-legged on the bed, Atlas lying before her, their faces inches apart. I'm glad you found me, Zoe was saying softly. I'm glad you picked me to hear you. Atlas made a soft sound, somewhere between a whine and a rumble. I know, Zoe replied, as if answering a question. The others need help too. We'll find them, I promise. Emma started to move away, not wanting to intrude, when Zoe called out, Mommy, Atlas wants to tell you something. Hesitantly, Emma entered the room. What is it, sweetie? He says there are more dogs like him, special dogs, and other children who can hear them, like me. Zoe's eyes were serious in her small face. He says we need to find them before bad people do. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, studying her daughter's earnest expression and Atlas's intelligent gaze. That sounds like quite a mission. Zoe nodded solemnly. It's important. Atlas says the special dogs and the children who hear them belong together. They protect each other. Something stirred in Emma's heart, part wonder, part apprehension. Whatever extraordinary gift her daughter and Atlas shared, it seemed this was just the beginning of their journey.
Well, she said finally, I guess we'd better get started then.
Atlas's tail thumped against the bedspread, his eyes bright with what could only be described as hope. If your pet could suddenly speak to you, what secrets do you think they would share? And would you be brave enough to listen? 6 months passed in relative peace. The Henderson family settled into their new normal, a life that now fully embraced Atlas as an integral member. His recovery was complete, the physical scars fading, though still visible beneath his thick coat. The emotional scars proved more resilient, manifesting in occasional nightmares that only Zoe's gentle presence could soothe. Stone's trial had concluded with a 20-year sentence for animal cruelty, illegal gambling, and a host of other charges. Dr. Garrett received a reduced sentence of 5 years in exchange for his testimony, which had proven invaluable in dismantling Stone's entire operation. On a crisp autumn Saturday, Emma and Max sat at their kitchen table with Detective Rivera, who had stopped May with unexpected news. Stone's appealing his conviction, Rivera announced without preamble, his expression grim. Standard procedure, but there's a complication. His new lawyer is arguing that the telepathic dog research was legitimate scientific inquiry, not animal cruelty. They're trying to position Stone as a misunderstood visionary rather than a criminal. Emma exchanged an alarmed glance with Max. That's ridiculous. We all saw those dogs, the conditions they were kept in. I know, Rivera agreed. The appeal is unlikely to succeed, but in the process, they're requesting access to Atlas for evaluation by independent experts. They're claiming he's still technically Stone's intellectual property, even if you have legal custody. Absolutely not, Max stated flatly, his hand closing over Emma's. After everything that's happened, no way. I agree, Rivera said, and so does the prosecutor, but I wanted to warn you that Stone isn't giving up. His obsession with Atlas and with Zoe hasn't diminished. The mention of their daughter sent a chill through Emma. Has he made specific threats? Not exactly, Rivera hesitated, but he's been asking questions. About Zoe's school, her activities. His visitors in prison are being monitored, but Stone has resources we haven't fully identified yet. After Rivera left, Emma found Zoe in the backyard with Atlas. The fall leaves had created a colorful carpet across the grass, and Zoe was tossing handfuls into the air while Atlas leaped to catch them. The sight of their innocent joy made Emma's heart ache with the need to protect them. That evening, after Zoe was asleep, Emma and Max discussed Rivera's warning. Maybe we should consider moving, Max suggested. A fresh start somewhere Stone couldn't find us easily. Emma had considered the same possibility, but something held her back. Running feels like letting him win somehow. Besides, Rivera says he's securely incarcerated. The appeal is just legal maneuvering. I hope you're right, Max said, but his worried expression matched her own inner doubts. The weeks that followed seemed to justify Emma's optimism. Stone's appeal was proceeding through the system, with the glacial pace typical of legal proceedings. Their life continued undisturbed: work, school, weekend outings. Atlas had even been certified as a therapy dog, accompanying Emma to the veterinary clinic where he helped calm anxious animals. Zoe, now 5 years old and in kindergarten, was thriving. Her teachers reported an exceptional empathy toward other children and animals, a quality Emma and Max understood had been enhanced by her unique bond with Atlas. They still maintained strict privacy around the exact nature of that bond, cautioning Zoe not to speak about her conversations with Atlas outside their home. On the surface, everything was perfect, but occasionally Emma would catch Atlas staring intently out a window, or positioning himself protectively near Zoe for no apparent reason. Each time, she would scan their surroundings, finding nothing amiss, yet unable to shake the feeling that they were being watched. The first concrete sign of trouble came on a Tuesday afternoon in November. Emma was working at the clinic when she received a call from Zoe's school. Mrs. Henderson, the school secretary's voice was tense. There was an incident at pickup time. A man we didn't recognize tried to sign Zoe out, claiming to be her uncle. When questioned, he left quickly. We've alerted the police, but I wanted to call you immediately. Emma's blood ran cold. Is Zoe okay? She's fine. She was still in her classroom. The man never got past the front office. Emma called Max, who left work immediately to pick up Zoe, while Emma contacted Detective Rivera. By the time she arrived home, Rivera was already there, taking notes as Max described the school's call. The school has security cameras, Rivera explained. We're reviewing the footage now. Did Zoe see anything? Max shook his head. She was in class the whole time. From her position on the living room floor with Atlas, Zoe looked up. It was one of the bad man's friends, she said matter-of-factly, the one who drives the blue car. All three adults turned to her in surprise. Zoe, honey, Emma began carefully. How do you know that? Zoe stroked Atlas's head. Atlas saw him before. He used to bring the fighting dogs to the bad place. Atlas recognizes his smell. Rivera knelt to Zoe's level. But Atlas wasn't at school today, right? No, Zoe agreed, but I can still hear him, even when he's not with me, and he remembers things to tell me later. The detective's expression remained neutral, but Emma could see the questions in his eyes. She and Max had never fully explained the extent of Zoe and Atlas's connection, partly because they didn't fully understand it themselves. The man has a star on his hand, Zoe added helpfully. Right here. She pointed to the web between her thumb and forefinger. Atlas says it's a tattoo. Rivera wrote this detail down. That's very helpful, Zoe. Thank you. After Zoe was sent to wash up for dinner, Rivera spoke quietly to Emma and Max. I don't know how your daughter knows these things, and I'm not going to ask. But if the security footage shows a man with a star tattoo on his hand, we'll have solid evidence this is connected to Stone. What do we do in the meantime? Max asked, his arm protectively around Emma's shoulders. Increase security, Rivera said firmly. Change routines. I'd recommend keeping Zoe home from school for a few days until we identify this individual. The security footage confirmed Zoe's description. A man with a distinctive star tattoo visible when he signed the visitor log. Rivera identified him as Marcus Reeves, a former associate of Stone's who had avoided prosecution by fleeing the jurisdiction during the initial investigation. The fact that he's surfaced now, trying to access Zoe, is concerning, Rivera admitted during his next visit. Stone must still be pulling strings from prison. Emma and Max implemented every security measure Rivera suggested. Zoe remained home from school. Max worked remotely. They varied their routines, installed additional cameras, and never left Zoe alone. Though with Atlas constantly at her side, she was never truly unprotected. A week passed without incident, then two. The constant vigilance began to wear on them all, especially Zoe, who missed her friends and school activities. Maybe we overreacted, Max suggested one evening, as they watched Zoe and Atlas playing a game that involved Atlas finding objects Zoe had hidden around the living room, a game he won with suspicious ease. It could have been a one-time attempt that failed. Before Emma could respond, Atlas suddenly stopped his playful search. His body stiffened, ears alert as he stared toward the front of the house. A low growl rumbled in his chest. "Someone's here," Zoe said, immediately moving closer to Atlas. "Someone bad." Max moved quickly to the window, careful to stay behind the curtain as he peered out. "There's a car I don't recognize parked across the street, dark sedan." Emma reached for her phone to call Rivera, but before she could dial, Atlas's growl intensified. He moved swiftly to the back door, his posture clearly indicating danger approaching from that direction. "They're coming from both sides," Max realized, already moving to ensure all doors and windows were locked. "Emma, take Zoe upstairs, now." Emma scooped up her daughter and hurried toward the stairs, Atlas following closely. From the second-floor window of Zoe's bedroom, they could see two men approaching the house from the backyard, while another waited by the car out front. "I'm calling Rivera," Emma whispered, already dialing. The call connected, but before she could speak, they heard the sound of breaking glass from downstairs. "They're inside," she hissed into the phone. "3 men. Breaking in. Please hurry." Max appeared in the doorway, his face pale but determined. "Bathroom," he ordered. "No windows. Lock the door." They crowded into the small upstairs bathroom, Max positioning himself in front of Emma and Zoe, while Atlas took up a defensive stance facing the door. The sounds of movement downstairs grew louder, drawers opening, furniture being moved. "Where are they?" a gruff voice demanded. "Check upstairs." Heavy footsteps on the stairs made Emma pull Zoe closer, whispering reassurances she didn't feel. The bathroom doorknob rattled. "In here," called another voice. "Locked." "Break it down," ordered the first voice. The door shuddered under a heavy impact. Atlas's growl deepened, his muscles tensing for action. Another impact. Wood splintered around the lock. A third blow, and the door crashed open. A large man filled the doorway, his face half hidden by a ski mask. Behind him, another similarly disguised figure held what looked like a tranquilizer gun. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Atlas launched himself at the first intruder, his powerful jaws clamping onto the man's arm. Max lunged forward, tackling the second man. The tranquilizer gun discharged, the dart missing Atlas and embedding itself in the wall. Emma shielded Zoe in the shower stall, watching in horror as the violent struggle spilled out onto the landing. The third intruder appeared at the top of the stairs, shouting, as he rushed to join the fray. Despite being outnumbered, Max and Atlas fought with desperate intensity. Atlas refused to release his grip on the first man's arm, even as the intruder slammed him against the wall repeatedly. Max grappled with the other two, using his knowledge of the house layout to keep them off balance in the narrow hallway. The sound of sirens pierced the chaos. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows. The intruders hesitated, then the one battling Max shouted, "Police, we've got to go!" The man in Atlas's grip finally broke free, leaving behind a torn sleeve in the dog's jaws. The 3 intruders retreated down the stairs and out the broken back door, just as police cars screeched to a halt in front of the house. Moments later, Rivera and several officers rushed in, weapons drawn. "Emma, Max, Zoe," Rivera called out. "Up here," Max shouted back, his voice strained. He had a cut above his eye and was favoring his right side, but was otherwise unharmed. Atlas stood beside him, blood, not his own, staining his muzzle. The house was quickly secured, and paramedics called to check Max's injuries. As Rivera took their statements, Zoe sat quietly with Atlas, whispering in his ear while stroking the fur between his eyes. "They wanted to take Atlas and me to the bad man," she said suddenly, interrupting Rivera's questioning. "Even though the bad man is locked up, he told them to bring us to a different place. A place with doctors who would study us." Rivera glanced at Emma and Max before addressing Zoe directly. "Did you hear the men say that, Zoe?" She shook her head. "No, but Atlas heard them talking in the car before they came in. They said the boss wants the special dog and the girl who talks to him. They said there's a lot of money if they deliver us." "Stone," Rivera muttered, shaking his head. "Still obsessed, still pulling strings." He turned to Emma and Max. "I don't think you can stay here now. It's not safe." "Where can we go?" Emma asked, the adrenaline crash leaving her voice trembling. "If Stone can find us here, with all our precautions—" "I have an idea," Rivera said after a moment's consideration. "A safe house we use for witnesses in high-profile cases. Off the grid, no paper trail. You'd be secure there while we track down these men and cut off Stone's outside connections." With no better options, the Hendersons agreed. They packed essential items while police officers remained stationed around their house. Within 2 hours, they were following Rivera's unmarked car to an undisclosed location outside the city limits. The safe house was a modest cabin, set back from a rural road, surrounded by woods that provided natural concealment. A female officer who introduced herself only as Jones would be staying with them, Rivera explained, along with a rotating security detail posted outside. "It's not ideal," he acknowledged, "but it's the safest option right now. Stone has clearly maintained connections we weren't aware of. We're investigating how he's communicating with his associates despite prison restrictions." After Rivera left, the Hendersons tried to settle into their temporary refuge. Officer Jones helped set up the security system, while Max prepared a simple dinner from the well-stocked pantry. Atlas prowled the cabin's perimeter, inspecting every corner before finally lying down near Zoe as she unpacked her small suitcase of toys and books. "How long do we have to stay here?" Zoe asked, as Emma tucked her into the cabin's small second bedroom that night. "Just until Detective Rivera makes sure the bad men can't find us," Emma explained, trying to keep her voice light. "Think of it like a vacation." Zoe seemed to consider this, her small face serious beyond her years. "Atlas says we should go to the water place." Emma paused in smoothing the blanket. "What water place, sweetie?" "Where the other special dogs are. Atlas says there are more like him, and they need our help." Zoe yawned, her eyelids growing heavy. "He says we'd be safe there, because the bad man doesn't know about it." Long after Zoe had fallen asleep, Emma sat at the kitchen table with Max and Officer Jones, sharing this latest revelation. Could it be real? Max wondered quietly. Other dogs from Stone's program that escaped or were rescued? "It seems unlikely," Officer Jones offered. "We thoroughly investigated all of Stone's properties. Any animals would have been discovered. Unless they weren't on any of his known properties," Emma mused. Zoe mentioned water. Could there be another facility we don't know about, near a lake or river? The question hung in the air, unanswered but troubling. 3 days passed in the safe house. Rivera visited daily with updates. The 3 intruders had not been apprehended, but Stone's prison communications were now being closely monitored. His appeal was still proceeding, though the prosecutor remained confident it would be denied. On the 4th morning, Emma awoke to find Atlas sitting by her bedside, his intense gaze fixed on her face. As soon as she stirred, he moved to the door, looking back expectantly. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, careful not to wake Max. Atlas padded silently to Zoe's room. Inside, Emma found her daughter already awake and dressed, sitting cross-legged on the bed. "We need to go, Mommy," Zoe said without preamble. "The other dogs are in danger. The bad doctor found them." A chill ran through Emma. "What bad doctor, Zoe? Dr. Garrett?" Zoe shook her head. "The new one, the one who works for the bad man now. Atlas says we have to hurry." Emma was about to dismiss this as a child's imagination when she noticed Atlas's behavior, his tense posture, the way he kept moving between Zoe and the door, his obvious agitation. "Where are these other dogs, Zoe? Can you tell me?" Zoe closed her eyes, as if listening to something only she could hear. "By the big water, in the old stone house with the blue roof. Atlas knows the way." Against all rational judgment, Emma found herself considering the possibility. Could there really be other dogs from Stone's program, hidden away somewhere? And if Stone had found them, what would happen to them? She woke Max and explained Zoe's urgent message. His initial skepticism gradually gave way to consideration as they discussed the possibilities. Even if it's real, he pointed out, we can't just leave a secure location based on what Atlas supposedly told Zoe. We should tell Rivera, let him investigate. But what if there's no time? Emma countered. What if these dogs are in immediate danger? Officer Jones, overhearing their conversation, entered the kitchen with a concerned expression. I need to advise against any departure from the safe house, she said firmly. Your family's safety is my priority. The debate continued until Zoe appeared in the doorway, Atlas at her side. Please, she said simply, her blue eyes wide and serious. They need us now. Something in her daughter's expression made Emma's decision. We're going, she announced. Officer Jones, you can come with us or report us missing, but we're leaving in 10 minutes. To Emma's surprise, after a brief internal struggle, Jones nodded. I'll come with you, but I'm calling for backup to follow us, and I drive. Within the hour, they were in Jones's unmarked car, with Atlas in the back seat between Emma and Zoe. Max sat up front, following Zoe's directions relayed through Emma. Turn left at the next road, Emma instructed as Atlas nudged Zoe, who nodded in confirmation. Then look for a dirt track near a big oak tree. The directions led them deeper into the countryside, eventually bringing them to a narrow road that wound alongside a large lake. There, partially hidden by overgrown vegetation, stood an old stone house with a faded blue roof, exactly as Zoe had described. That's it, Zoe whispered, her face pressed against the window. That's where the other special dogs are.
Officer Jones parked a discreet distance away and called for backup before cautiously approaching the property with Emma and Max. Atlas and Zoe remained in the locked car, despite Zoe's protests.
The stone house appeared abandoned at first glance, weathered, with several broken windows and an overgrown yard. But as they drew closer, Emma noticed fresh tire tracks in the mud, and what looked like recent footprints leading to the door. Someone's been here, Jones murmured, her hand moving to her holstered weapon. Recently. Before they could decide on their next move, a sound reached them. The unmistakable whimpering of dogs in distress, coming from somewhere behind the house. What they discovered there would haunt Emma for years to come. A dilapidated boathouse extended from the back of the property into the lake. Inside, in cages stacked along the walls, were 7 dogs of various breeds, all bearing the distinctive scarring patterns of Stone's fighting dogs. In the center of the space, a man in a white coat was preparing an injection for a German Shepherd puppy that could have been Atlas's younger twin. Officer Jones drew her weapon. Police! Freeze! The man spun around, shock evident on his face. Behind him, Emma could see scientific equipment, computers, and medical supplies, a makeshift laboratory hidden in this remote location. Step away from the animal, Jones ordered, her weapon steady. Hands where I can see them. The man complied, slowly raising his hands. This is a legitimate research facility, he began, his voice smooth and practiced. I'm Dr. Webb, conducting behavioral studies for a private foundation.
Save it, Jones replied coldly. We know about Stone's operation.
At the mention of Stone, the man's composure cracked slightly. He glanced toward a side door, clearly contemplating escape. Before he could move, the sound of approaching sirens reached them, Rivera's backup arriving. Within the hour, the boathouse lab was swarming with police and animal control officers. Dr. Webb was in custody, and veterinarians were examining the rescued dogs. Rivera arrived, taking in the scene with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. We've been looking for Stone's remaining research for months, he told Emma and Max. How on earth did you find this place? Emma glanced at Zoe, who sat in the grass nearby with Atlas, watching the rescue operations with solemn intensity. Let's just say we had a reliable tip, she answered. Later, as the last of the dogs was loaded into an animal control van for transport to a proper veterinary facility, Zoe approached her parents with Atlas by her side. Atlas is happy, she announced. He says thank you for believing us. Emma knelt to embrace her daughter, then rested her hand on Atlas's head. No, we thank you both for showing us what was possible when we listened with our hearts instead of just our heads. As they prepared to leave, the German Shepherd puppy, the one Dr. Webb had been about to inject, was carried past them. The small dog's eyes, one amber and one clouded blue, locked with Atlas's for a moment that seemed charged with meaning. "That's Nova," Zoe said confidently. "Atlas's daughter. She's special too. She needs someone to hear her." Emma and Max exchanged glances, a silent understanding passing between them. Their family's extraordinary journey wasn't ending today. It was just beginning. 6 months later, the Henderson home had transformed. With Stone's network dismantled and his appeal denied, they had returned to a life that looked normal from the outside but was extraordinary within. Atlas had been joined by Nova, the German Shepherd puppy from the boathouse, who was indeed proving to be special in her own developing ways. More remarkably, through Rivera's connections, they had been introduced to 2 other families with similar experiences, children who claimed to communicate with dogs rescued from Stone's operation. Together, they had formed a discreet support network, sharing their experiences and helping each other navigate their unusual circumstances. On a warm spring afternoon, Emma watched from the patio as Zoe, now nearly 6, played in the backyard with Atlas and Nova. The bond between them was visible even to the most skeptical observer. The way the dogs anticipated Zoe's movements, the silent communications that passed between them, the absolute trust on all sides. Max joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Still think we're crazy for believing in all this?" he asked with a slight smile. Emma leaned into him, watching as Zoe whispered something to Atlas that made the dog's tail wag with apparent amusement. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but then I remember that night in the motel when Atlas showed me." She didn't need to finish. They both recalled the moment when Emma had finally experienced for herself the faintest echo of what Zoe shared with Atlas. That impossible connection that transcended known science but couldn't be denied. "Dr. Lisa says Nova will be ready for therapy dog training next month," Max commented, changing the subject. "Think she'll be as good as her dad?" Emma smiled. "Better, maybe. Zoe says she's more tuned into people's feelings. Atlas is the protector, but Nova's the healer." As they watched, Zoe looked up suddenly, as if hearing someone call her name. Both dogs turned in the same direction, ears alert. "Someone's coming," Zoe called out. "It's Detective Rivera. Atlas says he has news." Sure enough, moments later, Rivera's car appeared in the driveway. He approached with a smile and a manila envelope. "Final paperwork on the Stone case," he announced, handing the envelope to Max. "Thought you'd want to see it officially closed." As the adults talked, Zoe sat between Atlas and Nova, one hand on each dog's head. Her expression was serene but knowing, as if she was privy to a wonderful secret that the rest of the world was only beginning to discover. The story of the little girl who stood up to protect one special dog had come full circle. Now that dog, and others like him, were protecting her in return, forming a bond that would change not just their lives, but perhaps the way humans and animals might communicate in the future. The truth was there for those willing to listen with their hearts, that sometimes the most extraordinary connections come in the most unexpected packages. If you've ever looked into your pet's eyes and felt they truly understood you, maybe they did. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe animals have more to tell us than we ever imagined. And tell us in the comments, what's the bravest thing you've ever seen a child or animal do to protect someone they loved?